All right. Well, we want to welcome everyone to today's Tiger Talk. This is the second Tiger Talk of the fall semester, and we have a special guest with us today from Student Leadership and Involvement. Dr. M.K. Tyler is going to talk to families about how you can help your student be involved on campus. We first want to remind everybody, please mute your microphone. And if you have questions, you can type them in the chat window. We'll make sure we get everybody's questions answered. But first, I'll get started. First, introducing myself. I'm Heather Hampton, Assistant Director of Parent and Family Services, and I'll toss it over to Cade so he can introduce himself.
Hey y'all, my name is Cade Forbes and I am the coordinator for Parent and Family Services.
And we're so excited for all of the families to be here. If you're listening live, feel free to ask a question in the chat. If you're listening to the recording later, if you have questions, feel free to email us at parents@memphis.edu. We love to answer your questions and get you the information you need so that you can help your student. So we'll go ahead and get going with our questions. We have a fun question that we like to ask our guest host. So, MK, what would you say is your favorite Weeks of Welcome event for this year?
Um, excuse me. Thank you so much for having me. Like Heather said, my name is Dr. M.K. Tyler. I'm the Director of Student Leadership and Involvement. And I had the immense privilege this year to be part of the Weeks of Welcome Planning Committee. And my favorite event, I believe, this year would have been our new tradition with the Bridge Walk, where students started on the south side of the bridge and walked over the bridge to kind of start their experience here at the University of Memphis, going straight into the President's Picnic. I think it's a really great way to put a start to a school year, and I'm excited to continue to create the tradition for the seniors in April to be able to walk the other way on the bridge to really end their school year well and end their time as a student here at the University of Memphis.
I would definitely agree. The bridge walk really was like a symbolic thing, and students were very excited about it. I was wondering how they were going to, receive this new tradition. And I mean, not only students were excited, but faculty and staff were excited to be there. And we had pom poms and things cheering the students on as they walked over and walked down the stairs. So I'm looking forward to it as well. So that's a good one that you chose there. So we'll go ahead and get started with our questions. The first question, more of an overview question, but what does student leadership and involvement actually do on campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think sometimes when you look at student leadership and involvement, you say that's a lot of really long words put together, but what do they do? And so our office services several functional areas here on campus, kind of from the start of your time in your academic career, students' academic career, all the way until graduation. And so we host some extended orientation programs in the summer, which is Camp 901 and Frosh Camp. So that would probably be a student's first experience with our office. We also oversee all of the student organizations here on campus, as well as Student Activities Council. So Student Activities Council is a group of students that has a budget from the university to plan large-scale programming. Which means we also work with Weeks of Welcome and Homecoming. And the Weeks of Welcome program also has about 180 student leaders every year that want to welcome first-year students to campus. In addition to that, we have fraternity and sorority life. So we have 23 Greek lettered organizations here on campus, and we help support those groups through their intake processes and their recruitments. And then we also have some leadership programs such as Emerging Leaders and Rising Leaders, which are scholarship programs, and some leadership trainings like Tiger Leadership Institute or Leader to Leader. And then finally, we oversee, we work in partnership with the Commencement Office to work with the President Leadership Awards and Honors Assembly every April. So that's where we honor all of our student leaders that have done a really great job, as well as our academic honors, and induct our newest members of Carson Circle, which is the highest leadership award that you can receive. And then we also help support Student Government Association. So we're in it. We really enjoy serving students. We're not the only office that services students, but we like to be a connection point to where if we don't service that area or we don't know that answer, we're going to help a student find a place to get connected.
Awesome. All righty. So really great overview. As you can see, we do a lot. So our next question actually says, how can my student find out about the various organizations and events happening on campus?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a very wonderful question. Finding out about events can happen in a lot of different ways, but the University of Memphis is very fortunate to have a program called Tiger Zone that houses all of our student organizations as well as the events happening on campus. And so I would encourage students to either visit memphis.edu/Tiger Zone on their computer or download the Tiger Zone mobile app where they can explore student organizations as well as the different events. And then something I think is really fun to tell students is that they can also filter their events by free food. So if they're ever saying, I just need a little bit of a snack or a pick me up, they can find an event with maybe a meal and something cool going on as well.
That definitely was something that I took advantage of in undergrad was the free food. The next question, a parent wants to know what are the benefits of their student joining organizations on campus? And we know there's some obvious benefits like free food, but what other benefits are there as students becoming more involved?
Absolutely. There are several benefits to becoming involved. And I think sometimes when people hear, oh, you need to get involved, they're like, oh, no, it's going to take away from my academic experience because it's something you're doing outside of the classroom. But what we have found, and we've done lots of studies over a lot of years, this is my 8th school year here, and students that are involved in something. So that means they're either in a student organization, maybe they're an RA, they're playing intramurals, they attend leadership events, or they go to career services events. As long as they're connected to school, we're finding that on average, they're receiving better grades, which means they're retaining scholarships, those opportunities, they're doing well in school. Part of that is because sometimes those organizations have an academic requirement, so they have peers that are holding them accountable. Other times it's because people are missing you when you're not in class. So they're saying, hey, we are all in this class together, and where have you been? Because I want you to be there. And then a benefit to that is that students are retaining at a higher rate, meaning they're coming back semester to semester to semester. They're less likely to stop out and say, I'm going to take a little bit of time off, which means they graduate quicker, which I think is always very helpful when you're looking at the cost of college and saying, okay, how can I do this an efficient way, but that is fun. And so we've seen students that are involved in something are really getting better grades, retaining at a higher rate, and graduating quicker.
Awesome. All righty. So our next question comes from a parent that says that their student was very involved as a leader in high school. Now they're curious if there are opportunities for additional leadership roles or also training in leadership in the student organizations.
Absolutely. We have about 250 student organizations here at the University of Memphis. So I like to say that there is something for everyone to get involved with. Some of those are really easy one-to-one connections, right? So if a student was a member of Key Club in high school, which is run through the Kiwanis, maybe they would join Circle K, or if they're part of the Rotary Youth Leadership Exchange, maybe they do Rotarac in college. Sometimes those one-to-one ratios or those one-to-one comparisons don't happen completely. But that's where our office likes to step in and help students find what they're connected to, whether that be through an academic unit that they're interested in, or just something that they think is really fun. And then a lot of our student organizations also offer continued training or meeting with advisors. So it's definitely not something that you need to stop once you get to college. We hope that you take that trajectory of really good things that you did in high school and let that propel you into a great involvement journey here at the university.
Thank you so much. So I'm kind of guilty of this next question, being a pushy mom, because as parents we want our students to experience things, and sometimes they don't necessarily see the picture like we see it, or they may be a little shy. So without being too pushy, this parents wants to know how can they encourage their student to explore clubs and activities and things on campus without, pushing them away from it, making it more, impactful as they talk to their student.
Absolutely. I think this is where a really great partnership between Parent Family Services and SLI come into play is that Parent Family Services is really good about sending out those big signature events that we have on campus to our parents. And it's my hope that you'll encourage your students just to attend an event, right? Because I think a lot of times we think you have to be all in or all out on involvement, meaning you are completely engaged, you are a student leader, you're in 5 different clubs, you're going to all these events, or you're not doing anything. But there's a lot of middle ground between that, between not doing anything and being the most engaged student you'll ever see on campus. And so I think a good first step is saying like, hey, what events have you been to? What is something that you've done for fun? Maybe attend an athletic event, something that's really low stakes, because then that helps students build affinity for the school. They say, I like it here. I want to spend a little bit more time on campus, or I want to give back or do service. Those one-time opportunities, I think, are a really great place to get involved. And then once they've done that, every once in a while, you can say that that's kind of like an appetizer to involvement. And then they can find that main course that really looks like a ongoing student organization or an ongoing leadership opportunity. And then they can kind of work, if we're going to continue this menu thing all the way through a meal, towards a dessert phase where they're either getting a scholarship or a award for their involvement on campus.
There we go. So the perfect meal of how to talk to your student about involvement. Perfect.
I did just eat
Alrighty.
lunch, so I think I'm always dreaming about food.
There we
Me
go.
too. Me too.
Alrighty, so the next question, this parent is concerned because obviously our university is a pretty large university, so they want to know how can their student find and connect with others, quote unquote, their people who share their interest.
Mm-hmm. I think that's always a really big worry. And before I think we go any farther, I just want to tell the parents that are watching today and listening that really thank you for being engaged and being involved with your students, because I know that our students really appreciate that. And so if they do not tell you thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because it makes our jobs a lot more enjoyable when we know that you're cheering your students on in the background. And I think my parents are very similar. I was at a very big school. I was 5 hours away from home, and they're like, we are very nervous. And I said, I'm a bit nervous as well. But finding your people, I think college is one of those places where you really get to explore and understand and invent and reinvent yourself in a way that is the most authentic to you. And there are student organizations that do that. And if they don't know where to start, I would love to talk to them. Please have them reach out to me. I'm sure Heather and Cade will be able to send out my contact information or reach out to them. But we're happy to connect them with things that are their interests. But really starting with a student organization or starting with something that they're passionate about. So maybe they're really passionate. I had a student email me one time. They said, I love dogs. I'm a psychology major and my favorite color is yellow. And what can I do? And I said, well, I don't know about the yellow, but it's also one of my favorite colors. But what if we found a way for you to volunteer at the Humane Society so they could find some connection that way? But really having students explore inward of what do they need and what are they interested in? And then either reaching out to a staff member that they trust or a peer and say, what is something that you do? And can I come with you?
That's some really good advice. Really good advice. So, once these students find their people and they, try out an organization, a parent wants to know, well, is there a fee to join an organization? What is the cost? Parents are always counting up the cost, so it's something important to know.
Absolutely. And I think cost, is always something that you have to think about. There's several organizations on campus that are free. And it's not that I can say these 5 organizations cost this much, these 6 organizations cost that much, but a lot of our organizations are very willing to work with students who are concerned about finances. I will say maybe the one caveat to that is your largest fees are typically going to come from your fraternity and sorority organizations. They do have payment plans, and that is something that they're willing to work with students about. However, they do typically carry the highest cost, but a lot of those organizations will list on their organization profile, either on Tiger Zone or at their meeting, what that cost looks like. And if they are concerned about costs, I would invite any student to attend a student activities council event or any event through student leadership and involvement, because the large portion of our events are free to students. So if they are worried about that, I would like to say a majority of the things here on campus are included in your student fees. So we can help you get started in that, but there are some organizations that do have an associated cost as well.
Awesome. Alrighty. So the next question is, when do most organizations meet?
Our organizations that they meet kind of throughout the entire day. So there's not one spot, I will say our organizations typically meet, I would say, if I had a guess, in the evening. Starting kind of at 4 is when I see our organizations put those meetings on those calendars every day. A lot of our groups meet on Sundays, but a lot of the multicultural groups meet throughout the week in between about 4 and 7. Our fraternities and sororities typically meet on Sundays, and then our sports organizations, they're having practice and playing pickup games almost every day. So there's something to do every day here on campus. Last year we had over 2,000 events and meetings with our student organizations. So there's a robust campus life here, and there is something for everyone to do.
Wow, that's a lot. 2,000. That's, man, it's on and popping there.
Mhm.
So the next question a family member wants to know, is it better for their student to focus on one organization or to try multiple or a variety of different types of organizations at the same time?
I think that is really dependent on the student. So deciding, do I want to try one or do multiple? It really depends on how much time the student has and what their other commitments look like. Because again, there's not one set route for involvement. So if a student is really unsure, I would encourage them to do those things that are a little bit more lower stakes. So attending events, maybe general meetings. And then once they find what they're really interested in, maybe they can remain members in a few organizations, but then they decide to commit a little bit more of their time into into one club. So they're on a committee, or they're on an executive board, or they're taking a little bit more of an active role in that one organization.
Awesome. All righty. So you mentioned both of these organizations a little bit earlier in a previous
Mhm.
answer, but this parent wants to know, what is the difference between SAC and SGA?
So Student Activities Council is SAC. SAC is what a lot of our students call it. And then we have SGA, which is Student Government Association. So SAC, Student Activities Council, they plan activities on campus. So they're going to be planning events such as homecoming, weeks of welcome, concerts, comedy shows, really focusing on programming. Student Government Association focuses on school governance and improvements. And so they have Senate meetings. So they have a group of 25 senators that they write bills and make recommendations straight to the president of the university to say, these are the things we think need to be improved upon. They represent their peers and their voice to the school administration. So they're less planning events and more focusing on school improvement and school governance. And Student Activities Council is focusing more on events here on campus.
That's good. Both entities are well needed on campus and make a huge impact. The next question, a parent wants to know, how does their student get involved in Greek life?
Mm-hmm. So that is a great question, and there are a few answers to that question. So we have 3 councils here at the University of Memphis. So we have our Panhellenic Council, which is 7 women's organizations. We have our National Panhellenic Council, or NPHC, which is a group of 9 men and women's fraternities and sororities that are historically African American. And then we have our Interfraternity Council, which is 6 men's organizations. So depending on which chapter the student, or which type of chapter the student would like to join, really depends on how they would get involved in that. So our Panhellenics, which is again is our women's organizations, and our Interfraternity Council, our IFC, our men's organizations, they have a formal or semi-formal recruitment structure where students can sign up, they go and they work through that process, and then after a certain period of time, they are typically extended a bid for membership into that organization. If they are interested in the National Panhellenic Council, or NPHC, each of those chapters will host intake on a timeline that is determined to them. So we don't set that timeline for them. And so they need to follow that organization and kind of get to know them. And then start with attending their interest session. And then they will have an intake process for that. For our National Panhellenic groups, our NPHC groups, students largely cannot do this their first year. So they need to either have at least 15 to 30 academic hours, because it's more of an application, interview, selection process versus just a recruitment process. And so when they're going through that intake process, there's a large focus on community service, and that is sustained community service. So that means you're doing it at the same place throughout a long period of time, showing a commitment to one organization, as well as a commitment to involvement on campus. And again, that's a sustained involvement. So maybe they're in a student organization for a few semesters before they go through that intake process, and then academics as well. For our Panhellenic and IFC organizations, students can participate in those recruitment processes their first semester. They just need to be enrolled in as a full-time student, so in 12 hours.
Perfect. Alrighty. And then speaking of community service, our next question is actually, how does my student get connected with community service projects?
Great question. So community service is overseen by the Center for Service Learning and Volunteerism. They are our neighbors, so we're happy to walk you over there. They're also in the involvement zone at the University Center in 211, the second floor. We're in 211 and they're in 245. But there is also a website called Volunteer Odyssey where students can go and they can explore those service opportunities on Volunteer Odyssey. They also, a good thing about that website is that every organization and every opportunity that's listed there is vetted through a process, so you know that it is safe and it is real. So you're showing up to where you need to show up and it is where you need to go. And then also it will track those hours for your student, which means done are the days of the pieces of paper that you're running around. Oh my gosh, I forgot to get this signed. I'm never going to see that person again. It doesn't count anymore. So they can sign up that way, or they can just log the service they're already doing, maybe with a group that they've had connections with through high school or in the community. They can log their service on that platform as well. If they don't want to just jump right in, the Center for Service Learning hosts service on Saturdays throughout the year. So once a month, they will get together and all do service together, which is a little bit less intimidating because you're like, we can go as a group, maybe make some friends. And they also have alternative break trips in the spring. So that means instead of going on a spring break, maybe with their friends to the beach or something, they can sign up for an alternative break trip where they would do service throughout that spring break. And they also have an international trip that takes place in May.
So lots of opportunities for community service and getting involved. Now, this next question is very real to me because when I started school, I was very shy and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to stay to myself. So a parent wants to know, for their shy and introverted student, how can they support them in overcoming the fear of joining new groups or social activities and just meeting people in general when they have that kind of introverted disposition and kind of afraid to step out of that box of shyness. What can we do to help that parent encourage their student?
Absolutely. I think understanding that our median organization size at the University of Memphis is about 25 students. So they're not going to be typically walking into a room that's super full of hundreds of people, and then they feel like they're kind of just lost in a sea of faces. But if that still feels too overwhelming, they are welcome to come to Student Leadership and Involvement or reach out to us, and we can connect them with an involvement ambassador, which is an older student that wants to help students connect one-on-one. So we say, hey, you seem really nervous, so let's sit down and I can talk to you. Maybe we can go to something together. Or they can talk to a staff member, but we think that peer-to-peer connection is really important. So we're happy to connect them that way. And then if they are like, I don't even want to walk in, right? Let me know where they are. I'll go find them. I'm just kidding, but I'm happy to meet up with them. And I think everyone in my office would be as well. So we really do want to meet students where they are and serve them how they want to be connected with. And that is not a one size fits all approach.
Awesome. And you'd also be shocked, even if your student might be the most outgoing person ever, or maybe in high school they were, once they get to college, it might be a little different. So even, those of you who think, oh, that's not my student, still maybe check in on them because you never know, we all have those introverted moments, especially when it comes to like new settings and new places and new people. So our next question is from a parent who has a student who has tried a few different organizations, but they just weren't really the right fit. So what should they do if they still want to be involved in something, but they're just kind of struggling to kind of find what that is?
I been so fortunate because I've had the opportunity to talk to not emerging leaders, excuse me, dual enrollment students about what it looks like to find your home. And we always talk about, what I talk to them about is looking at the circle of things that you're very passionate about. So what that looks like that makes you really happy. That I've had students say that, dogs make them really happy, or helping others, or like some students say, I'm really motivated by money. Other students, one student said, I'm really passionate about saffron. I go, the spice? And they go, yeah, it's like really rare. It's hard to grow. And I am just like very passionate about things that are like hard to find. And I was like, okay, that's really neat. So we look at that. So what are you really passionate about? And then that intersection of what is maybe something you want to do or where you see yourself in 5 years. So do you see yourself as a doctor? Do you see yourself, and it could be even broader. Like I see myself surrounded by people that I love. So if you can find what you're passionate about and kind of that vision that you might have for the future, that's a good place. That intersection is a good place to look for organizations. So if a student says, I'm really passionate about dogs and I see myself helping people, kind of going back to this humane society or service, that's a really great place. Or if they say, I'm really passionate about art and I really like to teach, maybe looking at like art history or a teacher's organization where they can combine those passions. Because I think sometimes students are like, I'm just going to join the biggest organization because that's where all my friends are. And that's not really what they want to do because they only have a finite amount of time for that involvement. So how do we connect them to something that they're really passionate about, but also thinks that it's going to combine those interests in a future goal as well?
So, on kind of the opposite end, what are some signs that a parent should be aware of to know if their student is starting to get overwhelmed or maybe, out of balance with balancing academics and or involved in too many things? What are those signs to look for?
Mm-hmm. I'm not a parent, but some signs that I've looked for in students in the past, just our student leaders, is if they're forgetting deadlines that seem very simple, that have never been something that maybe made sense to them, right? They always showed up, or they always called on Sundays, or they always turned in their homework. So maybe they're missing deadlines, or their academics, they're not performing at the level that they typically do, or that they typically strive to achieve. Those are pretty obvious signs. Also, change in like sleeping patterns, or if they're not eating certain meals or lunch or dinner, something to look out for. Or if they just start skipping class. And again, those are sometimes harder to see when you're a parent and your students at college because you're not there with them all the time. But I think when you have an open dialogue with your student, you can check in on them pretty quickly of what did you do today? Tell me about that. Or they're really tired, or they're really upset about something. So really kind of looking at those change in moods, looking for those change in academics or academic rigor. And sometimes it's because their classes are getting harder, but we have resources that can help them as well on campus. And then if any typical habits that they have had for a long time are changing, that might mean they're a little bit too involved.
Awesome. So then kind of following up with that question, you started touching on it a little, but what can parents or families say or do to help their student make that balance and be successful with that balance between academics and then their organizations as well?
First and foremost, our students are student leaders, and before leader becomes student. And so they cannot be student leaders if they are not students. And to do that, they have to make their grades. So the first and foremost, we always want students to achieve and excel academically. And so a good place to start, if they don't know really where to start or what type of academic support they need, they can start at Educational Support Programs, ESP. It's run by Dr. Becca. She's lovely, and she has a great team that helps students really prioritize their time and prioritize what they need to study with. And there's also supplemental instruction for some classes, which is run by a TA. And they can help say, okay, well, in the last 2 years, you haven't really had to study, but now you're in all of your major classes and they're going to be much, much harder. And the time commitment that you need for school might shift. And so just being able to help students realize that what happened or what helped what worked one academic semester might not work for academics the next semester. And then also talking to students about maybe you shouldn't take XYZ types of classes or 18 hours or 21 hours in a semester if that's not something that you've typically done. And they can talk to that, their academic advisors about that as well.
Yeah, it's definitely important to keep those grades up and keep that as a priority. As good as involvement is, if you're on probation and things like that, then that kind of takes your focus away. So those are some good tips that students and parents can adhere to. So our last question really is how can parents get involved? Of course, parents can't go and join the Student Activities Council and Student Government Association, but what can they do to stay involved and connected with their student?
Um, I think there's a lot of different ways that parents can continue to stay involved. I think the one of the most obvious ways is just that constant communication or those timely check-ins with your students and asking them what they're doing. Um, Being interested in whether you know anything about, they might say, I have joined the underwater basket weaving club. You're like, I don't know anything about that, but please tell me something. So being able to and willing to learn with your students and learn how to kind of learn about their interest. And then showing up when there are times that parents can come. So parent and family weekend coming up here pretty soon. Would love to have as many parents as possible at that. Heather and Kate have planned a great schedule for y'all. And that's a great way to see that slice of campus life for your student. And then also just maybe if you could come to an athletic event if you're close. If not, staying up to date with the university newsletters and the president perspectives that get sent out are great ways to be involved with your student, but maybe not running your student's involvement experience.
That's good. I like how you said that, staying involved but not running their experience. So sometimes that can be tough for a parent to kind of let go of that control and let their student take that front seat. We talk in new student orientation about the tandem bicycle approach and, family members letting their student take the lead. So that's very important to remember as a parent. But yes, we want to thank you so much, Dr. MK, for being with us and sharing all these nuggets of wisdom. Hopefully, family members feel supported and have some tools that you can use and resources that you can share as you continue to encourage your student to get involved on campus, to maintain that academic and extracurricular balance, to get out from their comfort zones and find their community on campus and really begin to flourish and grow even outside of the classroom. So we appreciate you so much for taking your time. Did you want to share any final thoughts with family members or any reminders or announcements or anything? We'd love to give you that opportunity.
Well, I appreciate that. My big reminder is I would love to meet all of you at Parent and Family Weekend here soon. And Kate and Heather did not ask me to say this. I just think it's going to be a really great week. I promise. And so I would love for y'all to do that. If you are out of state or you're unable to travel, would love to connect with you in a different way. And you have my contact information. I love to talk to people. So please do not hesitate to reach out. There are some parents that I met over almost 8 years ago that called up to the office, and they called every week to ask what involvement opportunities they had for their parents or for their children. And all their children have graduated, and they still call to say hello every once in a while. So we're happy to listen and happy to talk. And thank you for supporting your students and trusting the University of Memphis with your students, because there's a lot of choices for college. And if there's any alums missing or not missing, listening, thank you for listening, and thank you for your continued support to the University of Memphis. And I hope to see you soon and say welcome home.
Thank you so much. So we've
Oh,
got some.
perfect.
Yes, we didn't want to let this Tiger Talk end without reminding everybody. Dr. MK has shared it and mentioned it several times. We are hoping that you will join us for Parent and Family Weekend 2024. It's September 27th through the 29th. You still have time to register. You can bring siblings, grandmother, aunt, uncle, cousins, bring whoever you want to bring. But we've got some fun activities planned, and it's a great way for your student to feel the support and to be proud of the university that they're a part of and show you how they're living and what they're doing on a daily basis. So we'd love for you and your family to join us. If you have any questions or anything about anything you've heard today, feel free to reach out to Parent and Family Services, parents at memphis.edu. You can reach out to us by phone or text at 901-678-2115. But we thank you for joining us for this Tiger Talk. It'll be recorded and put on our YouTube channel. So if you missed something, go back and watch it again. And then we'll catch you also on our next Tiger Talk on October 22nd, where we'll be talking about with the Chief of Police about campus safety. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great day.